In the quiet village of Abodo, dusk was an uneasy transition. As the sky dimmed, doors were locked, and whispers hushed. The elders would exchange knowing glances, murmuring prayers and warning the children to stay inside. But fear was palpable, and with good reason. Every few weeks, when the moon rose just right, the night caller would come. It always started with a voice. A familiar, comforting voice calling from outside a hut. "Amaka, my child, come. Kalechi, my dear, step outside." The sound was unmistakably that of a loved one, and every time someone answered, they were never seen again. Kamau, a young man in his 20s, had known the fear intimately. His own brother, Kalechi, had answered the night caller 3 months ago, vanishing without a trace. Kamau's grief had festered into rage, and he resolved to find the truth behind this terror. How could a spirit deceive them so cruelly? What did it want, and how could it be stopped? Tonight, Kamau sat by the hearth with his mother, Neka. She busied herself with weaving, her hands moving automatically, though her eyes glanced at the door as if it might open any moment. "You won't stop me, Mama," Kamau said quietly. Neka's hands stilled. She knew what her son meant, though she had tried for weeks to dissuade him. She had already lost one son. She could not lose another. "Kamau, my son," she whispered, her voice heavy with warning. "The night caller is no spirit to toy with. It is an ancient force, older than this village. Leave it be." "I cannot," Kamau replied, his eyes resolute. "Kalechi's spirit is not at peace. I feel it. I need to face the caller. For him, for us all." With a reluctant nod, Neka reached into a small chest by her side. From it, she pulled out a carved amulet on a leather cord. It was a protective charm given by the village elder, believed to ward off dark forces. "This was your father's," she said, pressing it into his hands. "May it protect you, Kamau. And remember, do not answer, no matter what you hear." Kamau clasped the amulet around his neck, and left his mother with a determined nod. He made his way to the village elder's hut to learn more about the night caller's origin. The elder, a stooped man with a voice as fragile as the autumn leaves, awaited him. "The night caller," the elder began, "is not just a spirit, but the shade of an ancestor wronged by our people. Its curse has lingered for generations, seeking justice for betrayal, for secrets buried deep. Those who answer the call are drawn to it by unresolved guilt." Kamau thought back to his brother, Kalechi, a gentle soul with no known sins. Could Kalechi have harbored a secret that led him to his fate? The idea disturbed him. "So how do I end this curse?" Kamau asked, his fists clenched. The elder's eyes narrowed. "It is said that the spirit will only rest when the village acknowledges its wrongs. You must uncover the truth of the wrongs done, Kamau. Confront the night caller with this truth, and perhaps you can break its hold." Kamau returned to his hut, and prepared himself for the night's vigil. The silence of Abodo weighed heavy as darkness swallowed the village whole. Midnight came, and the village seemed to hold its breath. Then it began. "Kamau," the voice drifted into the night, soft and persuasive. "Kamau, my son, step outside." Kamau's heart raced. It was his mother's voice, her precise intonation, the warmth in her tone. But he clutched the amulet around his neck, steadying himself against the lure. "I will not answer," he whispered to himself. "You are not my mother." The voice softened, pleading. "Kamau, don't you want to see Kalechi again? Don't you want to know the truth about him?" Kamau's grip on the amulet loosened. Kalechi, could it truly be him? No, he reminded himself. He needed proof, a solid truth. Kamau closed his eyes, steeling his mind against the voice. The night caller's form began to emerge outside his hut, a shadow twisted and shifting, its face a cruel mimicry of those it had taken. As Kamau looked into the caller's visage, he saw flashes of the past victims, their lost faces, their haunting eyes. And there, embedded in the darkness, was Kalechi. "Your brother's secret, Kamau," the caller hissed, its voice like dry leaves scraping against stone. "He was not the innocent soul you thought." Kamau's resolve wavered, but he held firm. "I will not answer you, spirit. You must rest. The village will honor the truth." The shadow recoiled, its eyes narrowing. "Then you shall have your brother's secret," it whispered. And with a sudden rush, memories flooded Kamau's mind. Kalechi's clandestine meetings, the hidden glances, the stolen items he'd found but ignored. Kalechi, it seemed, had harbored a silent guilt. The spirit began to wail, its cry echoing through the night. Kamau took a deep breath, then stepped forward, amulet in hand. "Let your wrath be ended," he shouted into the dark. "Your justice is seen. The truth is known." And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the night caller's form dissipated, melting back into the shadows. Peace washed over the village, as if a long silent curse had been lifted. As dawn cast its first light on Abodo, the village stirred cautiously. Word spread quickly that Kamau had faced the night caller and survived. Many gathered outside his hut, whispering in awe and relief. Kamau, still weary from the night's ordeal, emerged to meet them. The village elder approached, leaning heavily on his staff, his face a blend of relief and worry. "Kamau," the elder greeted him, "you've done what no one else has dared." But the night caller's wail last night, it was not a cry of defeat but a warning. Its curse still lingers. Have you uncovered the truth it seeks? Kamau thought back to the visions he'd seen, to the glimpse of his brother's hidden guilt. But he knew the spirit's thirst for justice was not sated. There was something larger, something buried in the heart of the village that held the night caller bound to this realm. "I've seen a hint of it," Kamau replied, his voice steady but troubled. "But it is not just my brother's guilt. The curse runs deeper than any of us knew." The elder nodded grimly. "Then we must seek out those truths, no matter how painful. The village's survival depends on it." Kamau began his search with the oldest families of Abodo, speaking with those who had known the village's past. Each family held stories of love, loss, and betrayal, and Kamau gathered them like pieces of a puzzle. The villagers' tales painted a picture of a once thriving community torn apart by envy and resentment. One night, a frail old woman named Mama Chitty approached him. Her hands shook as she recounted a tale that few in the village still remembered. A tale of an ancestor named Anayo, who had once been a powerful leader in Abodo. Anayo was loved by all, she began, her voice cracking with age and sorrow. He brought prosperity to the village. But jealousy brewed in the hearts of a few men. They betrayed him, accused him of false crimes, and cast him out of the village. He died alone, cursing the village that had turned on him. Kamau's heart pounded. "And they buried his memory along with his body?" Mama Chitty nodded. "The elders of that time swore their descendants to secrecy, hoping that silence would end his curse. But curses do not die with time, Kamau. They wait and grow stronger." Kamau realized that Anayo was the original night caller. His spirit, twisted by betrayal, was now bound to seek justice from the very bloodlines that had wronged him. Only an acknowledgement of that crime and an offering to his spirit could bring him peace. Kamau brought his findings to the village elder, who agreed to hold a gathering at the old baobab tree, where it was said Anayo had once given blessings to the people. News spread quickly, and on the night of the ritual, every villager gathered under the tree's ancient branches. The elder led the ceremony, recounting Anayo's story and asking forgiveness on behalf of the village. One by one, the descendants of those who had wronged Anayo stepped forward, each bearing an offering of peace, a symbol of the lives they had built, a way to honor Anayo and acknowledge his pain. Kamau took his place beside the elder, holding the amulet as a token of courage. He closed his eyes and began to speak directly to Anayo's spirit. "Anayo," he called, his voice echoing across the gathering. "Your story is heard. Your pain is seen. We seek your forgiveness, so your spirit may find peace." The wind shifted cold and sharp, as if a storm were brewing. A shadow began to form at the edge of the clearing. The villagers held their breath, some gripping each other's hands in fear. And then there it was, the night caller, taking on the shape of a tall, ghostly figure. Its face was twisted in sorrow, its voice a haunting echo that filled the air. "After all these years, you remember," the spirit murmured. Its voice was softer than Kamau had ever heard, as if it was finally weary of its vigil. The elder stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Anayo, we ask you to rest. Let the bond between our people and your spirit be mended." The night caller turned its gaze to Kamau, as if searching for something within him. Kamau felt a deep warmth spread from the amulet around his neck, a light that seemed to soothe the spirit. Slowly, the night caller's form began to fade, dissipating like mist under the morning sun. Its final words lingered in the air. Remember me." The village was silent as dawn broke, casting a warm glow over the clearing. The villagers knew the curse had been lifted. The air felt lighter, the shadows less imposing. Kamau, exhausted but relieved, returned home to find his mother waiting. She embraced him, her relief palpable. "You have done what many would not dare," she whispered. "You have freed us all." Life in Abodo slowly returned to normal, and people spoke of the night caller with reverence rather than fear. Kamau, however, felt a lingering presence, a quiet reminder of Anayo's story and the lesson it left behind. That silence and secrecy can fester, growing into darkness. Years later, whenever the village children asked about the night caller, Kamau would tell them of Anayo, the brave leader who was wronged, and the power of remembering and honoring those who came before. And each time as he finished, he'd catch the faintest whisper in the wind, a voice both sorrowful and content, finally at rest.